They wanted our blood, now it stains their seats. Part 1. The Harvest. The Valkyrie had been watching Earth for a very long time. They first found humans through their deep space sensors almost 200 years ago. At that time, humans were just beginning to leave their home planet. They were building small stations around their moon and sending ships to nearby planets. The Valkyrie watched all of this with great interest. They studied human bodies, human behavior, and most importantly, human blood. The Valkyrie were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were completely black, and they moved with a strange grace that made humans uncomfortable. They had built an empire across 17 star systems. They controlled dozens of other species. They were old, powerful, and very patient. Their scientists discovered something remarkable about human blood. The iron in it, the way it carried oxygen, the strange proteins it contained, all of these things could be used to make a special medicine. This medicine could extend Valkyrie life by hundreds of years. The rich and powerful among them could live almost forever if they had enough of this medicine, but the medicine required fresh human blood. Lots of it. The Valkyrie did not ask for permission. They did not offer to trade. They simply took what they wanted. The abduction started slowly. A farming village on a distant colony world would go silent. A mining ship would disappear between jump points. A research station would send a distress signal, and when rescue ships arrived, they would find empty rooms and bloodstains on the floor. At first, the United Colonies of Earth thought these were accidents. Space was dangerous. Ships failed. Colonies died. It was sad, but it was normal. Then the survivors started appearing. They were found drifting in escape pods, barely alive. They told stories that no one wanted to believe. Gray creatures with 4 arms. Medical tables with straps. Needles and tubes. Being kept alive but barely conscious while machines drained their blood day after day. Commander Yara Chun was 32 years old when she learned the truth. She was a soldier in the Colonial Defense Force, stationed on a ship called the Resolute. She was good at her job. Her commanding officers said she was calm under pressure and smart in a fight. None of that mattered when she received the message about her brother, David. Chun had been a teacher on a colony called New Harvest. It was a small world, mostly farmers and families trying to build a quiet life away from the crowded cities of Earth. The Valkyrie had taken the entire colony in a single night. 3,000 people gone. YIA spent months trying to find information. She called in every favor she had. She broke rules. She threatened people. Finally, a contact in colonial intelligence gave her a file. The file contained pictures from a Valkyrie facility in orbit around a planet called Kepler-442b. The pictures showed humans in tanks filled with blue liquid. Tubes ran from their arms and necks. Their eyes were open but empty. They were alive, but only in the most basic sense. Their bodies were being kept working so that their blood could be harvested. Again and again. David was in one of those tanks. Yara stared at the picture for a long time. Her brother had always been the kind one. He became a teacher because he wanted to help children. He used to send her messages about his students, about the crops they were growing, about the sunsets on New Harvest. Now he hung in a tank, kept alive by aliens who saw him as nothing more than a source of medicine. Colonial intelligence had known about this for years. They had not acted because they were afraid. The Valkyrie were too powerful. A war would destroy humanity. It was better to lose a few thousand people than to lose everyone. Yara did not accept this. She found others who felt the same way. Soldiers who had lost family. Scientists who had seen the reports. Politicians who could not sleep at night knowing what was happening. Together, they planned a rescue mission. The attack on the Kepler-442b facility was supposed to be quiet. 12 soldiers in a small ship, slipping past the orbital defenses, cutting their way into the station, and getting out before anyone noticed. Nothing went according to plan. The Valkyrie had guards everywhere. The fighting was brutal and close. 3 of Yar's team died in the first 5 minutes. But they kept pushing forward, room by room, corridor by corridor. When Yara finally reached the harvesting chamber, she stopped breathing for a moment. The room was huge. Hundreds of tanks stretched from floor to ceiling, each one containing a human body. The blue liquid glowed softly, and the only sound was the quiet hum of machines. It smelled like chemicals and something else, something that made her stomach turn. She found David's tank. She pressed her hand against the glass and looked at his face. He was thinner than she remembered. His skin was pale, and his hair had gone gray even though he was only 35. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm getting you out." They managed to free 47 people that day. 47 out of hundreds. The others were too far gone, their bodies too damaged by years of harvesting. Yara had to make terrible choices about who to save and who to leave behind. David was one of the ones they saved. But he did not wake up during the escape. He did not wake up during the long journey back to safe space. The doctor said his brain had been damaged by the drugs the Valkyrie used to keep their victims quiet. He woke up 3 weeks later. He looked at Yara and did not recognize her at first. When he finally remembered, he started to cry. "They took everything," he said. "They took everything, and they laughed." The rescue team had grabbed something else from the facility. Data cores. These cores contained shipping records, medical files, and customer lists. The Valkyrie were not just using human blood for themselves. They were selling it to other species across the galaxy. Humans were a product, traded and sold like any other resource. One file showed the location of the Valkyrie High Symposium, the ruling council that had authorized the harvesting program. The most powerful leaders of the Valkyrie Empire gathered there once every cycle to make decisions about their territory. The survivors of the rescue could barely speak for weeks. The trauma was too deep. But when they started talking, they all said the same thing. Make them remember S.YAR looked at the data on her screen. She looked at the faces of the people they had saved. She thought about the hundreds they had left behind. "We will," she said quietly. "I promise." The war had not started yet. But in that moment, in the heart of a soldier who had lost too much, it became inevitable. "They wanted our blood. Now it stains their seats." Part 2. The Awakening. The survivors were not the same people who had been taken. Dr. Marcus Eulerin noticed it first. He was the chief medical officer at the military hospital where the rescued humans were being treated. He had been a doctor for 20 years, and he had seen many strange things. But nothing had prepared him for what he found in the blood of these 47 patients. Their blood had changed. The Valkyrie drugs had done something to them. The human body, pushed to its absolute limits for months or years, had started to adapt. New proteins appeared in their blood. Their healing was faster than normal. Their reflexes were sharper. And when Marcus tested their blood against Valkyrie tissue samples, he discovered something remarkable. Human blood had become poison to the Valkyrie. The drugs that the aliens used to keep humans calm and passive had triggered a defensive response. The human body had learned to fight back at a cellular level. If a Valkyrie touched this new blood, their skin would burn. If they consumed it, they would get very sick. If enough of it got into their system, they would die. Marcus called it crisis evolution. The human body had rewritten itself to survive. The survivors called themselves something else. They called themselves the Stained. Their skin sometimes showed faint blue marks where the tubes had been connected. These marks would not fade. The survivors wore them like badges. They were proof of what they had survived and what they had become. but the Stain were only 47 people. The Velkari Empire had thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. The question facing humanity was simple. What should they do? The Colonial Council met in an emergency session. Representatives from every human world gathered to discuss their options. Some wanted to fight. Others said that war was impossible. The Velkari were too strong. Humanity would be destroyed. "We should negotiate," said Councillor Petrov, an older man with tired eyes. "Perhaps we can offer them something else. Technology, resources, anything but our people." "They do not want anything else," said Commander Chun. She stood at the center of the council chamber, wearing her uniform. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard. "We are not people to them. We are livestock. You can't negotiate with someone who thinks you are an animal." She held up a small device. "I have recordings from the harvesting facility. I want you to see what they did to our people." The council chamber fell silent as the recordings played. The images were terrible. Humans in tanks, being drained of blood. Velkari technicians talking casually while people screamed. A human who had somehow broken free of his restraints, trying to escape. The guards caught him and laughed as they dragged him back. One of the counselors started crying. Another had to leave the room to be sick. "They've been doing this for 200 years, Chun said when the recording ended. "They have sold our blood to 46 different species. We have found evidence of at least 20 harvesting facilities across their territory. Thousands of our people are still in those tanks right now, being drained until their bodies give out. What do you propose?" asked the council president, her voice shaking. "War," Chun said simply. "Total war. Not for territory or resources. For justice. For the people we have lost and the people we can still save." "We cannot win," Petrov said. "Their fleet is 10 times the size of ours. Then we will have to fight differently." The vote took 3 hours. Every councillor struggled with the decision. They knew that war would mean death for many humans. They knew that victory was not certain, but they also knew what would happen if they did nothing. The abductions would continue. More people would vanish. More families would be destroyed. Humanity would slowly be bled dry, one colony at a time. The vote for war passed unanimously. That night, Commander Chun visited the medical ward where the Stained were recovering. Most of them were awake, sitting together in a common room. They did not talk much. They did not need to. They had shared an experience that no one else could understand. David Chun was there, sitting by a window and looking at the stars. He had started to remember more each day. The memories were painful, but he faced them. He refused to look away from what had been done to him. The council voted for war, Yara told them. The Stain looked at each other. Something passed between them, a silent communication born from their shared suffering. "Good," said a woman named Elena. She had been a fauna on a colony called Green Valley before the Velkari took her. She had spent 4 years in a tank. "But fighting their ships won't be enough. We need to hurt them where they feel safe." "What do you mean?" Yara asked. "They think they are untouchable," Elena said. "They sit in their fancy halls and make decisions about who lives and who dies. They never see the blood. They never hear the screaming. They need to see it. They need to feel it." David turned from the window. "She's right. They need to understand that we are not just something to be used. We are dangerous. We will find them wherever they hide. We will make them afraid." Yara looked at her brother. He was not the gentle teacher she remembered. That man had been killed in a harvesting tank. This person was something new. Something harder. Something the Velkari had created without meaning to. "The military is building a new unit," she said. "Special operations. Small teams that can get in and out of enemy territory without being detected. They want the Stain to lead it." The survivors smiled. It was not a happy expression. It was the smile of people who had found a purpose in their pain. "We have some advantages," Marcus said. He had joined them in the common room. "Your blood is toxic to them now. Their paralytic weapons don't work on you anymore. Your reflexes and healing are enhanced. You are not normal humans anymore. You are something that evolution created specifically to fight them." "Evolution didn't create us," Elena said. "They did. They made us into weapons. Now we're going to show them what that means." The training began the next day. The Stain pushed themselves harder than anyone thought possible. They learned to fight with knives and guns and their bare hands. They learned to move silently through enemy ships. They learned the Velcari language, their customs, their weaknesses. They became ghosts. They became nightmares. And across human space, the message went out to every colony, every ship, every station. Humanity was at war. Not for conquest. Not for glory. For survival. For justice. For everyone who had ever been taken. The Volcari had wanted human blood. They had gotten it. But they had not understood what they were taking. Human blood carried something more than iron and oxygen. It carried stubbornness. It carried fury. It carried a refusal to surrender, even when everything seemed lost. Now the blood was coming for them. They wanted our blood. Now it stains their seats. Part 3. The Doctrine of Presence. Admiral Kofi Asante stood before a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Velcari territory. Blue dots marked human space. The red covered almost half the map. The blue was a tiny cluster in one corner. "We cannot beat them with ships," he said. "Their fleet is larger, faster, and more experienced. If we fight them in open space, we will lose." The military commanders around him nodded. They had all reached the same conclusion. The numbers were simply too bad. Humanity had maybe 200 warships. The Velcari had thousands. "So we do not fight them in open space," Asante continued. He pressed a button, and new markers appeared on the map. "We fight them everywhere else." He called it the Doctrine of Presence. The idea was simple. Humanity could not destroy the Velcari Empire, but they could make it impossible to run. They could appear anywhere, strike quickly, and disappear before the enemy could respond. Every official who had signed a harvesting order would learn to fear the dark. Every species that had bought human blood would find their ships burning in the night. The goal was not conquest. The goal was consequence. Commander Chen led the first strike team. They called themselves Shadow Unit, and they were made up entirely of the Stained. Their first target was a Velcari merchant station in a system called Torvin. According to the data cores from the harvesting facility, this station had processed thousands of human blood shipments over the years. The station's commander was named Vertal. He was fat by Velcari standards, which meant he had lived a comfortable life. He had gotten rich selling human blood to wealthy clients across the galaxy. He had never seen a human except in tanks. Shadow Unit arrived at night, when the station was running on skeleton crew. They cut through the outer hull and moved through the corridors like smoke. The Velcari guards never saw them coming. One by one, they fell silently. Vertal was eating dinner when his door opened. He looked up and saw a human standing in his private quarters. His first reaction was confusion. Humans were not supposed to be here. Humans were supposed to be in tanks. Then he saw the look in their eyes, and he understood. "Please," he said. "I can give you money, ships, whatever you want." Chen walked toward him slowly. "You process shipping orders for human blood. You knew where it came from. You knew what was happening." "I was just following orders," Vertil said. His voice was shaking. "The High Symposium decided to harvest humans. I only did what they told me to do." "That is not an excuse," Chen said. She pulled out a knife. It was not a weapon from her military training. It was a simple tool, the kind farmers used on colonies like New Harvest. Like the colony where her brother had been taken, Vertil died badly. His screaming echoed through the station until it suddenly stopped. When the Valkyrie sent ships to investigate, they found the station drifting without power. All the guards were dead. All the shipping records had been downloaded. And written on the wall of Vertil's quarters, in his own blood, were 4 words: "We remember our dead." The news spread quickly. The Valkyrie tried to hide it, but rumors moved faster than their censors. A human strike team had penetrated one of their stations and killed a senior merchant. No survivors. No prisoners. Just bodies and a message. More attacks followed. A fuel depot. A communication relay. A shipyard where new vessels were being built. Each time, Shadow Unit appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished. Each time they left bodies and messages, but Chun knew that terror alone would not win the war. Humans were still outnumbered and outgunned. They needed allies. She found them in unexpected places. The Marani were a species that had been conquered by the Valkyrie 300 years ago. They were short creatures covered in brown fur, with large eyes and gentle voices. Before the conquest, they had been artists and philosophers. Now they were servants. Chun met with their secret leader in a hidden location on a neutral world. His name was Tormak, and he was old even by Marani standards. "Why should we help you?" Tormak asked. "If we rebel and fail, our entire species will be destroyed. The Valkyrie have been draining your population for centuries," Chun said. "They do not harvest your blood like they harvest ours, but they take your young people as slaves. They take your resources. They take your future. How much longer can you survive under their rule?" Tormak was quiet for a long moment. Many species have tried to fight the Valkyrie. All of them failed. "We are not like other species," Chun said. "We do not accept defeat. We do not surrender. We will keep fighting until we win or until every last one of us is dead. And if you die, then at least we died fighting. At least we showed the galaxy that the Valkyrie can be hurt." Tormak looked at her with his large, sad eyes. Then, slowly, he nodded. 300 years, he said. "For 300 years, my people have been waiting for someone brave enough to fight. You are the first species that has actually made the Valkyrie afraid. We will help you." The Marani were not warriors, but they were everywhere in Valkyrie society, working as servants and clerks and technicians. They could gather information. They could sabotage equipment. They could open doors that would otherwise be closed. Other species joined the growing coalition. The Tessic collective, silicon-based traders who had been cheated by the Valkyrie for centuries. The Varanak, insect-like creatures who had been forced to give up half their home planet. Even a faction of Valkyrie themselves, low-caste workers who had watched the elite live forever while they aged and died. "You want to know why we are helping you?" The Tessic ambassador asked Chun during one meeting. "Because in all our history, you are the first species that fought back and actually made them bleed. You showed us that they are not gods. They can be killed. That changes everything." The coalition grew in secret. Networks formed. Information flowed. Plans were made. And in the shadows, they prepared for something the Valkyrie had never faced. Not just an attack, but a coordinated uprising. Not just on one world, but on 17. Not just from humans, but from every species that had ever suffered under Valkyrie rule. The empire that had seemed untouchable was about to learn the true cost of the blood they had taken. They wanted our blood, now it stains their seats. Part 4. The Symposium burns. Crystalline Spire had stood for 10,000 years. It rose from the surface of the Valkyrie, homeworld like a finger pointing at the stars. It was made of living glass that glowed softly in the darkness. the most beautiful building on the most powerful planet in 17 star systems. The heart of an empire. Once every cycle, the High Symposium gathered there. 60 of the most powerful Valkyrie in existence came to sit in their ancient seats and decide the fate of billions. They divided territories. They approved harvesting programs. They collected the profits from selling the blood and suffering of other species. They had done this for thousands of years without fear. No enemy had ever reached their homeworld. No enemy had ever been foolish enough to try until now. The attack had been planned for 2 years. Every detail had been checked 100 times. Every piece had to work perfectly, or everything would fail. The first step was already complete. Marani servants throughout the Spire had been quietly recruited to the coalition. They had spent months mapping every corridor, every security system, every guard rotation. They knew the building better than the Valkyrie, who ruled it. The second step happened 3 hours before the symposium began. Across 17 star systems, coalition forces launched simultaneous attacks. Shipyards burned. Communication relays went dark. Military bases were assaulted. The Valkyrie fleet, scattered across their territory to deal with these threats, could not return to the homeworld in time. The third step was the Tessic Collective. They had been selling weapons to the Valkyrie for centuries, taking payment in resources and territory. But they had also been hiding something. For the last year, every weapon system they sold contained a small flaw backdoor that could be activated by a specific signal. When that signal went out, half the orbital defense platforms around the Valkyrie homeworld simply stopped working. The fourth step was the insertion. A single ship, painted black and running silent, slipped through the gap in the defenses. It carried 32 humans. All of them were stained. All of them had lost someone to the harvesting facilities. All of them had been training for this moment for 2 years. Commander Chun stood at the front of the group as the ship descended toward the crystalline spire. She looked at the faces around her. Elena was there, the farmer who had spent 4 years in a tank. Marcus was there, the doctor who had discovered what they had become. And David was there, her brother, the teacher who had been transformed into something harder and more dangerous. "We all know what to do," Chun said. "Find the high speakers. Kill or capture as many as we can. Leave no doubt about what happened here." The ship landed on a hidden platform near the base of the spire. Marani servants had disabled the alarms. The doors opened silently. Shadow Unit entered the heart of the Valkyrie Empire. The fighting started almost immediately. Despite all their preparations, they could not avoid every guard. But the Stained had advantages that normal humans did not. They were faster, stronger, and impossible to stop with the paralytic weapons that Valkyrie guards carried. They moved through the corridors like a storm, leaving bodies behind them. Elena led a team to the power core and set charges that would bring down the upper floors if they were discovered. Marcus led another team to the data center, downloading every secret the Empire had tried to hide. David led a team to secure the shuttle bay so the high speakers could not escape. Chum led the main assault toward the central chamber. The chamber was enormous. It rose up through 20 floors of the spire, with seats carved into the walls like a vertical amphitheater. The 60 seats of the high speakers were made of crystal that had been grown over centuries. Each seat was a work of art worth more than most starships. When Chun's team broke through the doors, 23 high speakers were still in the chamber. Some were trying to flee. Others were screaming orders at guards who were already dead. A few sat frozen in their seats, unable to believe what was happening. The fighting in the chamber lasted almost an hour. The high speakers had personal guards, the best warriors in the Valkyrie military. These guards were skilled and loyal. They died anyway. When it was over, Chun stood in the center of the chamber. Blood covered the crystal floor. Bodies lay scattered across the ancient seats. The air smelled like smoke and death. She looked up at the seats and saw one high speaker still alive. He was old, his gray skin wrinkled and spotted with age marks. He wore the robes of a senior official, decorated with symbols of his authority. Chun recognized him from the data cores. His name was Verthan. He had personally authorized the harvesting facility where David had been kept. He had signed the order that sent her brother into a tank. Verthan looked down at her with something like curiosity. "You are the human," he said. "The one who has been causing so much trouble." "Yes," Chun said. She started climbing the steps toward his seat. "This changes nothing," Verthan said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "You can kill everyone in this building. It does not matter. The Empire will survive. We have ruled for 10,000 years. We will rule for 10,000 more. Maybe," Chun said. She reached his seat and looked at him. He was not afraid. He had lived so long and gained so much power that he had forgotten how to fear. "But you will not be there to see it." "Kill me then," Verthan said. "I am old. I have lived 400 years. I have eaten well and slept in comfort while your kind bled in tanks. Nothing you do to me can take that away." Chun smiled. It was not a kind expression. "I am not going to kill you," she said. "Not quickly." She shot him in the knee. Verthan screamed a high, thin sound that echoed through the chamber. He fell from his seat and landed on the bloody floor below. "You wanted our blood," Chun said, looking down at him. "Now yours will stain your own seat." She left him there, bleeding and crying in pain, surrounded by the bodies of his colleagues. Let him feel what it was like to be helpless. Let him understand what his victims had experienced. The crystalline spire burned that night. The charges Elena had planted brought down the upper floors in a cascade of shattering glass. The explosion could be seen from orbit. The most beautiful building on the Valkyrie homeworld, the symbol of their eternal power, was reduced to rubble, and across the galaxy, a message played on every communication frequency. It showed images of the burning spire. It showed the bodies of the high speakers. It showed Chun standing in the central chamber, surrounded by her team. "The harvest is over," she said in the recording. 200 years ago, you started taking our people. You drained their blood and sold it like any other product. You thought we were animals. You thought we would never fight back. You were wrong. This is our message to the Valkyrie and to every species that bought what you were selling. Come for us again, and we will come for you. There is nowhere you can hide that we cannot reach. There is no protection that will save you. Remember this night. Remember what happened to those who thought they could take our blood without consequence." The message ended with a final image, the crystalline spire collapsing. Its 10,000 years of history disappearing in fire and smoke. The war was not over. But the galaxy would never be the same. They wanted our blood, now it stains their seats. Part 5. The New Order empires do not fall in a single night. They crumble slowly, piece by piece, until one day people look around and realize that what once seemed eternal is simply gone. The attack on the crystalline spire killed 43 of the 60 high speakers. The survivors tried to rebuild. They called emergency meetings. They appointed new leaders. They sent their remaining fleet to hunt down the coalition forces. But something had changed. For 10,000 years, the Valkyrie had ruled through fear. Other species obeyed because they believed resistance was impossible. The Empire was too strong, too old, too powerful. Fighting back meant death. The burning spire proved that was a lie. Within the first month, 3 systems declared independence. These were not important systems, small colonies on the edge of Valkyrie space, populated by species who had been waiting for a chance to escape. But their rebellion inspired others. The Marani stopped serving. All across the Empire, These gentle creatures who had been slaves for 300 years simply put down their tools and refused to work. The Valkyrie had built their entire society on Morani labor. Without them, stations went dark, food stopped being prepared, and garbage piled up in the streets. The Tessek Collective announced that they would no longer trade with anyone connected to the harvesting program. This included most of the wealthy Valkyrie who had depended on human blood to extend their lives. The life extension serum became scarce. The rich and powerful who had lived for centuries began to age. Even within Valkyrie society, cracks appeared. The low-caste workers who had never received the serum watched the elite hoarding what remained. Questions were asked that had never been asked before. Why should some live forever while others died young? Why should they suffer so that their rulers could be immortal? The coalition did not try to occupy Valkyrie territory. Humanity did not have enough ships or soldiers for that. Instead, they offered something more dangerous: hope. A new station was built in neutral space, far from any empire's borders. It was called Haven, and it became the meeting place for the coalition of free species. Representatives from 32 species gathered there for the first assembly. The Morani sent Tormak, the old leader who had trusted Chun when everyone else was afraid. The Tessek sent their chief negotiator, a being made of crystal and light who spoke in harmonic tones. The Voranak sent a young queen who had lost half her family to Valkyrie attacks. Even some Valkyrie came low-caste workers who had turned against their own people, and humanity sent Admiral Asanti, Commander Chun, and the other leaders who had guided them through the war. The first session was chaos. 32 species with different languages, different customs, and different needs tried to agree on anything. Old grudges surfaced. Arguments broke out. Some representatives stormed out in anger, but slowly, carefully, agreements were reached. The coalition would not seek to destroy the Valkyrie Empire. That would only create more suffering. Instead, they would contain it. Trade would be restricted. Military access would be denied. The empire could continue to exist, but only within its current borders. No more expansion. No more harvesting. No more slavery. Any species that wanted to leave Valkyrie territory would be welcomed into the coalition. Any individual who wanted to defect would be protected. The galaxy would have an alternative to Empire, a place where different species worked together as equals. The Morani chair rotated to humanity for the first year. Not because humans demanded it, but because the other species insisted. "You showed us how to fight," Tormak said. "You showed us that the powerful can be challenged and the oppressed can rise up. Now show us how to build something better." It was the greatest honor humanity had ever received, but Commander Chun did not attend the assembly. She traveled back to Kepler 442b, to the moon where the harvesting facility had once stood. The building was gone now, demolished by coalition forces and replaced with a memorial. A simple garden surrounded by walls of black stone. On those walls were carved thousands of names, every human who had died in Valkyrie. Harvesting facilities. David's name was not there. He had survived. But thousands of others had not. Chun walked through the garden alone. It was quiet here. The only sound was the wind moving through the plants that survivors had chosen, flowers from a dozen different human worlds, growing together in alien soil. She stopped in front of the main wall. So many names. So much suffering. So many families destroyed. "We made them remember," she said quietly. "We made them pay for what they did. But was that enough?" The dead were still dead. The years of torture could not be undone. David was alive, but he would never be the gentle teacher he had once been. The trauma had changed him forever. A sound made her turn. A transport ship was descending toward the landing pad near the memorial. Chun watched it touch down, and the doors opened. Children came running out. They were the first colonists. the beginning of a new settlement on this moon. Families who had volunteered to build homes where their people had once been tortured. They wanted to transform this place from a site of horror into a symbol of hope. The children ran through the garden, laughing, pointing at the strange alien flowers. They did not know what had happened here. They were too young to understand. To them, this was just an adventure, a new world to explore. Chun watched them, and something shifted inside her. This was why they had fought. Not for revenge, not for glory. For children who could laugh without fear. For families who could live without worrying about gray-skinned aliens coming in the night. David walked up beside her. He had come on the transport ship, helping to guide the first colonists to their new home. His face was still hard, still marked by what he had endured. But as he watched the children play, something softened in his eyes. "They do not know," he said, "about the tanks, about the blood, about any of it." "Good," Chun said. "That means we succeeded." David nodded slowly. "I thought I would never feel anything again. After what they did to me, I thought that part of me was dead. But watching these families start new lives." He paused. "Maybe we can heal. Not completely. Never completely. But maybe we can find something worth living for." Chun put her hand on her brother's shoulder. They stood together in silence, watching the children explore the garden where so much suffering had once occurred. The Valkyrie had wanted human blood because it could make them live longer. They had seen humanity as nothing more than a resource, a product to be harvested and sold. They had not understood what they were truly taking. Human blood carried more than iron and oxygen. It carried a stubbornness that refused to accept defeat. It carried a fury that burned cold and patient until the moment was right to strike. It carried a capacity for hope that could survive anything, now that blood stained the seats, where tyrants had ruled for 10,000 years. The crystalline spire was gone. The high symposium was broken. The empire that had seemed eternal was crumbling at the edges, and in its place, something new was growing. A coalition of species who had learned that they did not have to accept oppression. A memorial on an alien moon where children played among flowers. A galaxy that was changing, slowly but surely, because some small creatures from a blue planet had refused to die quietly. Chun looked up at the stars. Out there, somewhere, the remaining Valkyrie were still holding on to their power. There was still work to do, still battles to fight, still people to protect. But standing in this garden, surrounded by the laughter of children and the memory of the dead, she allowed herself to feel something she had not felt in years. Hope. The harvest was over. The future was beginning, and humanity would face it together.